She said I'd never see my grandkids again unless I paid for her dream wedding. That's the sentence I repeated to myself while staring at the zeros on the contract. $520,000. $520,000 for a one-day event where my name wasn't even on the invitation. I signed anyway. I signed because I'm 73, and you get tired of begging to be loved. Celine, my daughter, used to run into my arms when she was little. Now she runs numbers, budgets, guest lists, deadlines. I'd become another item on her to-do list, one to manage, to fund, to sideline, but not to love. You said you wanted to be involved, she reminded me coldly, as if I'd volunteered for humiliation. This is your way of showing up. I wasn't invited to the planning meetings. I wasn't copied in the email threads. I wasn't introduced to the groom's family. They had a rehearsal dinner at a vineyard the week before the wedding. I heard about it from my neighbor's niece. She saw it on Instagram. That's how I find things out now. Not through my daughter, not through calls or visits, through photos, captions, sideways mentions. And still, I paid. I paid because I wanted to see my grandsons again. 7 and 5, both born after Celine moved to California with a vision and a fiancé who drove a Tesla and called me ma'am, like I was housekeeping staff. The last time I saw the boys was Christmas. They brought me a mug that said Best Grandma, and then spent the whole day watching an iPad while Celine and her fiancé argued in the kitchen about a vegan roast. When I tried to take a picture with them, she pulled the phone away. "No pictures," she hissed. "You know how Jared is about online presence." I don't know how Jared is. Jared doesn't talk to me. But I paid. I paid because I still have her drawings in a shoebox under my bed. Crayon hearts. Stick figures. "I love you, Mommy," in backward letters. That little girl is gone, but I can't seem to accept it. So I sat across from the wedding planner, a young man named Travis with mirrored nails and a pencil behind his ear, and I signed every line. Catering, floral, photography, guest lodging, live band, private transport, makeup for the entire bridal party, all in my name. You understand that if anything changes less than 24 hours before, the deposits are non-refundable? Travis warned. I understand. He looked at me with something like pity, then offered me lemon water in a glass that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. Later that day, I called my lawyer. "Put everything under my name," I told her. "Every contract, every invoice. I want full administrative control." She paused. "That's not standard, Martha. Most parents write the checks, but they don't." "I'm not most parents, and I'm not stupid." She drew up the papers. At home, I made a pot of tea and sat on my porch in the fading light. My street hasn't changed in 40 years. The mailboxes are the same. The trees are a little taller. My knees are a little worse. I looked at the receipts again. I whispered to no one, "This better be worth it." It wouldn't be. Not because of the money. I've had money. I've not had money. It all disappears eventually. But I thought, I hoped, that if I paid for this wedding, my daughter would see me. Not as a burden. Not as someone to manage. But as her mother. Her only living parent. The woman who raised her through night shifts, stomach aches, and silent tears on the bathroom floor. Instead, 2 days before the ceremony, she asked me not to wear the navy dress I'd picked. "It's a bit outdated," she said with a rehearsed smile. "We want the photos to have a modern aesthetic." "It's all I have," I said quietly. She didn't offer a solution, just tapped on her screen and left the room. So I called a cab and went downtown. Found a boutique where the mirrors were kind. I bought a deep green dress I couldn't afford. The sleeves covered the worst of my arms. The neckline was respectful. The fabric fell well. The saleswoman said I looked elegant. I paid in cash. The day before the wedding, Celine sent a message. Arrive at 3:30. Don't bring a +1. Please stay quiet during the ceremony. Jared's family is particular, not, we're excited to see you, not, thanks, Mom, just rules. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click with each slow turn. And I remembered something. On Celine's 7th birthday, I made her a chocolate cake with sugar daisies. She squealed so loud the neighbors thought we'd won the lottery. I didn't have much that year, but she never knew. She used to love me. The next morning, the sun came in hard through the kitchen window. I put on the green dress, pulled my hair back, put on my late husband's watch. It doesn't work anymore, but it looks nice. Solid, like I used to feel. I looked in the mirror. Let them see you, I said to my reflection. All of you. And I left. The venue was called the White Juniper, one of those converted barns with chandeliers hanging from exposed beams and lavender sprigs tied to every chair. It looked like something out of a magazine, the kind Celine used to tear pages from and glue into collages when she was in high school. Funny how she circled her dream wedding before she'd circled a decent man. I arrived at 3:28, not a minute early, not a minute late. The parking lot was already crowded with SUVs and rental vans. Vendors moved quickly, catering staff in black aprons, florists in tank tops with thorns stuck to their fingers, 2 men unloading lighting equipment with the word ambiance printed across their shirts. No one looked at me. I walked past the check-in table. A girl in a pastel jumpsuit asked, "Are you with the bride or the groom?" I paused. It was a simple question, but I didn't know the answer. "The bride," I said. "I'm her mother." Her eyes darted to a clipboard. "Name?" "Martha Hendricks." She scanned the list, flipped a page, then frowned. "I don't see you here." I felt something cold crawl up my neck. "I paid for the wedding," I said calmly. "Oh." She straightened. "I didn't know." "Sorry. Go right in, Mrs. Hendricks." I walked through the wide barn doors into a world I had funded and been erased from. The place was stunning, I'll admit that. Rows of white chairs lined with greenery, a long aisle runner made of hand-woven fabric, a glass altar that reflected the late afternoon sun like it was blessed. I found my seat in the second row, 3rd chair from the aisle. The place card said, "Reserved." No name, just a placeholder. That's what I'd become, I suppose. There were no programs on my seat. The woman beside me, who smelled of expensive sunscreen and orchids, leaned toward her friend and whispered, "That's the mother of the bride, I think." I saw her in the lobby looking kind of lost. I didn't correct her. I looked down at my hands. The veins were more pronounced these days. The rings sat looser. I'd thought about getting them resized, but I liked the way they slipped around. A reminder that things move, shift, don't stay in place. Not even love. A young man in a headset approached. "Mrs. Hendricks?" "Yes." He bent down. "Travis would like to speak with you. He's in the staging suite." I followed him out of the hall, past the gift table where a gold-framed sign read, "Welcome to the wedding of Celine and Jared, where love is timeless and family is forever." I had to stop myself from laughing. Upstairs, the suite was a flurry of activity. Dresses, makeup kits, curling irons. A bridesmaid sat on the floor, eating pretzels from a Ziploc bag, while another scrolled through Instagram. Travis stood in the middle, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Mrs. Hendricks," he said, "we have an issue with the photo booth vendor. He says the deposit didn't go through." That's not possible, I said. It was scheduled with the others. All payments were processed through my investment account. Yes, well, he says otherwise. I opened my purse, pulled out the folder I'd brought, one with copies of every receipt, contract, and authorization. Page 12, I said, handing it over. Signed, dated, processed last Tuesday. Tell him to check his records again. Travis flipped through it, lips pressed in approval. You're very thorough. I ran a business for 40 years, I said. Laundry, not events, but books are books. I'll handle it, he said, and disappeared down the hallway. I turned to leave, but heard a voice from behind a curtain. Seriously, Celine? You let your mother come in that dress? It was one of the bridesmaids. I didn't know which one. They all looked the same to me. Tan, styled, sharp. She insisted, Celine's voice replied. I didn't have the energy to fight her. Let her wear what she wants. She'll be in the back row anyway. I thought you said she was funding everything. She is, Celine said flatly. But that doesn't mean she has taste. There was laughter. Not cruel exactly, just detached. The laughter of people who thought they were being honest, stylish, superior. I didn't say a word. I walked out of the room as quietly as I'd come in. Back downstairs, the groom's family had begun arriving. His mother, a petite woman with coral lipstick and a string of pearls, was being photographed by the arch. She posed with confidence, as if she were the one who'd built the house that hosted the party. She probably thought she had. I stood off to the side and watched as the guests filtered in. No one spoke to me. A few nodded politely. One woman asked if I worked for the venue. At 4:10, I went to the restroom to check my hair. The lights were bright, unforgiving. The green dress still looked good. Better than good. It looked like someone who tried, who showed up. I looked at my reflection. I smiled slightly. Then, from the hallway, I heard a door click open. Voices. Low, hushed. I shouldn't have listened. I wasn't trying to. But I froze, hand still on the doorknob. It was Jared, the groom, and he wasn't alone. I didn't move. His voice was low, joking. God, you're trouble, he said. Do you know that? A giggle. Female. Familiar, somehow. You're the one who pulled me in here, the woman whispered. I was on my way to get my lashes fixed. Silence, then a shuffle. Fabric against fabric. Just 5 more minutes, Jared said. She won't even notice I'm gone. She? You mean your fiancé? Another laugh, sharper this time. Then a sound I won't describe. Not out of modesty, but because something in me recoiled. Not from what they were doing, but from how casual it was. As if there were no wedding in 2 hours. As if there were no promises being written on white paper downstairs with gold lettering and floral borders. I stepped back, slowly, carefully, and returned to the bathroom. My reflection stared back at me, calm, silent. But the hands, they were shaking. Not rage, not even heartbreak. Something quieter, a deeper note. The hum of a string pulled too tight for too long. I took a breath, and then I left the bathroom, walked quietly back toward the hallway, and kept going. Past the guests. Past the seating chart with its calligraphy and curated balance. Outside, into the sunlight that had already begun to dip behind the trees. I didn't know where I was going, but my feet carried me back toward the side entrance, where the vendors smoked between deliveries and adjusted headsets. No one paid me any mind. I found a bench beside the catering truck and sat down. Let them have their wedding, I thought. Let them eat their meals and sip their wine. I've eaten alone before. I can do it again. But something kept pulling at me. A string I hadn't let go of. a part of me that had been quiet for too long. I pulled out my phone, opened the contacts. Franklin, attorney. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Hendricks," he said. "I was just going to email the updated language for the vendor clauses." "Franklin," I interrupted, "I need you to prepare something else." There was a pause. "Of course. I want to execute my rights as the legal party on all service contracts for today's event. I want you to notify the bank immediately. Freeze all pending payments, effective now." He hesitated. "Mrs. Hendricks, the ceremony is in 2 hours," I said. "That gives us time." "Are you certain?" I looked down at my hands. "I was told I'd never see my grandkids again if I didn't fund this wedding," I said. "But if this is the example they're supposed to grow up watching, maybe not seeing them is kinder." Franklin was quiet. Then, firmly, "I'll begin the process now. Expect a call from the payment office within the hour." I hung up. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even when I saw Celine from a distance, being photographed under the floral arch with her bouquet of white peonies and imported eucalyptus. She looked radiant, pleased, whole. And I felt like a stranger standing on the edge of a movie set, watching the lead actress smile through a scene I had paid for but wasn't allowed to touch. A staff member approached. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need help finding your seat?" "No," I said, rising from the bench. "I need a ride." She looked surprised. "Are you leaving?" "For now." "Should I let someone know?" "No," I said calmly. "Let them start the show." I walked back to the road and called a cab. The driver was a young man with an eyebrow piercing and a t-shirt that said, "Nope." "Where to?" he asked. I gave him my address. In the rearview mirror, I saw his eyes flick to my dress. "Coming from a wedding?" he asked. Something like that. We didn't talk after that. At home, I changed out of the green dress and into something softer. I made tea. I turned on the lamp in the corner, the one with the warm light that makes the living room feel like dusk no matter the hour. Then I opened my laptop. Email after email. Vendor after vendor. I sent formal notices of payment withdrawal and contract nullification. Franklin replied quickly. The cancellation penalties would be high. I told him I didn't care. The truth is, $5,000 to $20,000 was never just money. It was love I was trying to buy back. And like most things sold at that price, it was never going to be delivered. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the bank. Transaction block confirmed. $4,000 to $18,000 of remaining pending payments stopped. Partial services already rendered may not be refundable. Please confirm next steps. I texted back. Proceed. Open trust account in grandchildren's names. Equal division. Another message came through, this time from Celine. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen, then another. "The planner can't reach the caterer. What's happening?" And then, "Mom, did you do something?" I turned the phone over. No answer is still an answer. I sipped my tea. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel small. I felt exactly my size. A woman with a spine. A woman who could still say no. Let the guests sit. Let the music fade. Let my daughter look around and realize something's missing. It's not the cake. It's not the flowers. It's me. The phone rang again, then again, and again. I let it ring. By the time the fifth call came through, I'd already silenced it. Celine, then Jared, then Travis, then the White Juniper office, as if the building itself had developed feelings and needed answers. I opened the window a crack. Let the air in. Outside, my neighbor was watering her roses. A dog barked 2 streets over. The world, I noticed, was still turning, even as their wedding began to crumble. The first real message came at 5:12. "Mom, where is the band? They're not here and no one is answering." Then, a second one. "Travis said the bar is shut down. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. Because yes, I was okay. For the first time in years, I was more than okay. Across town, in a barn dressed up like a fairy tale, the spell had started to break. According to Franklin's update, which arrived via a calm email with 3 bullet points and a PDF attachment, the following vendors had been notified: catering, services withheld due to breach of payment; entertainment, performance canceled due to frozen contract; photography, partial session halted, no post-processing authorized; venue, still operating under reduced terms, but legally informed of sponsor withdrawal; and most importantly, all parties were told who the financial backer was. My name. Not a private donor, not anonymous family member. Martha Hendricks. Let them say it now. Let them explain. I poured another cup of tea and opened the living room window. The breeze carried in the smell of pine and pavement. November air always had that edge. Not yet winter, but close enough to sharpen the lungs. The next message was from Travis. "Mrs. Hendricks, I don't mean to intrude, but there's some confusion regarding payment status. Could we possibly speak ASAP? No apology, no surprise, just logistics. That boy would do well in finance." I didn't respond. Then came the voice message from Celine. I didn't want to listen, but I did. "Mom, I don't know what's going on, but people are starting to notice. The food hasn't come out. Jared's parents are asking questions. I thought you were at the hotel. Where are you? Can you please call me?" Her voice wasn't angry yet. Not yet. Just tight. Tense. Like a balloon stretched too far but still holding shape. At 5:45, the first real crack happened. Reed, my neighbor's nephew, the one who worked part-time with the event staff, texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, Mrs. H, I'm working that Juniper wedding. Something weird is going on. Did you pull the plug or something? People are freaking." I smiled, then put the phone down. I imagined it clearly. Guests glancing around, wondering why there's no music, why the servers have disappeared, why there's no champagne, just water in pitchers with browning lemon slices. Jared pacing, Celine whisper shouting, Travis typing frantically on his tablet. It wasn't cruelty I felt, not satisfaction. It was more like justice. Not petty, but precise. Not revenge. Restoration. At 6:10, a knock at my door startled me. I opened it, and there, to my great lack of surprise, stood Jared's mother. Her lipstick was gone. Her eyes were wild. The pearls looked tighter now, like a noose. "Mrs. Hendricks," she said, not even pretending civility. "We need to talk." I didn't move from the doorway. "How did you get my address?" "Your daughter gave it to me." "Of course she did." "She's in tears," the woman continued. "Jared is livid. The guests are waiting. There's no food, no music, no anything. And now I hear you paid for the wedding? And pulled out?" I nodded. Yes. She blinked, thrown by the simplicity of my answer. "I don't understand. Why would you do that?" "Because," I said calmly, 2 hours before the ceremony, I found your son groping one of the bridesmaids behind a curtain." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That's absurd. I saw it, heard it. I know what I know." She crossed her arms. "That's not a reason to sabotage your own daughter's wedding." "No," I said, voice steady. "The reason was the years of being used." The years of being told I was lucky to be tolerated. The years of funding silence. I took a breath. And because it was all in my name. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You're making a mistake," she said. "This will ruin everything." "No," I said. "It will start something." I closed the door. Back inside, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Celine. "Please, I'm begging you. Everyone is looking at me like I'm a liar. Jared won't explain anything. The cake hasn't arrived. You have to fix this. You have to. And then, if you don't, I swear I'll never forgive you." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "You threatened never to let me see my grandkids again if I didn't pay. Now you're threatening never to forgive me because I did. On my terms. I think we're done with threats." I hit send. And for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt clean. By 6:40, the wedding was no longer a wedding. It was a beautifully dressed disaster. Guests began to leave in small, polite waves, murmuring excuses about babysitters and early flights. The kind of excuses people invent when they don't want to admit the party has died and they're looking for the exits. The band never arrived. The dinner never happened. The bartender, unpaid, packed up his mobile bar with an almost smug efficiency. In the middle of it all stood Celine, still in her dress, still holding her bouquet, still pretending that if she smiled wide enough, it might all reverse itself. But even her smile had cracks now. You could see it in the eyes. Eyes that darted from person to person, hoping someone would offer a solution she didn't have. Jared, meanwhile, had disappeared. No one had seen him in 20 minutes. I imagine he slipped out the back the moment it became clear the event was collapsing. Men like him don't stay for cleanup. They don't carry chairs. They don't apologize. They vanish. At 6:58, Celine called again. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. Then she called from another number. This time I answered. "I'm standing here," she said, her voice low and shaky, "in front of 100 people. My fiancé is gone. The food is gone. The lights are off. The DJ just told everyone he's not playing because you canceled his check. What did you do to me?" Her voice cracked at the end, not out of grief. Not yet. It was something worse. Fear of humiliation. I let a pause stretch between us before answering. "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "I just stopped doing everything for you. You've ruined my life." "No, Celine. I saved mine." She went quiet. In the silence, I could hear faint voices in the background. The rising buzz of guests realizing that the event had truly collapsed, that there would be no recovery, no second course, no first dance. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "I tried," I said. "For years. With phone calls you didn't return. With money I kept giving. With kindness you treated like currency." There was a pause. "Why today?" she asked, almost childlike. "Why now?" "Because 2 hours before your wedding, I saw the man you were about to marry with someone else. Because I realized that if I stayed quiet again, I was teaching my grandsons that women should pay to be disrespected. And I won't do that. Not for you. Not for anyone." "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know." Then I added, gently, "And I believe you." That silence, the second one, it was heavier, sadder, and maybe more honest than anything we'd shared in years. "Celine," I said, "I loved you before you could speak. I raised you with hands that were always full and never asked to be held, but I am done begging to be seen." She didn't reply. Not right away. Finally, she said, So what now? Now. I looked around my house, at the framed photo of her in pigtails, at the empty teacup beside me, at the evening sun drawing long golden lines across the floor. Now, I thought. I breathe. You decide, I said. You can keep being angry, or you can think. But either way, I'm not coming to clean it up. I hung up, and for the first time in her life, I let her sit in the silence she had made. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a young woman on my porch, one of the bridesmaids. She looked embarrassed to be there. "Hi, Mrs. Hendricks," she said. "I'm Nora. Well, I guess I'm the reason the wedding didn't happen." I studied her. Pretty, nervous, probably 27 or 28. The kind of woman who hadn't yet realized that beauty doesn't come with immunity. "I figured it out," I said. Two voices behind a curtain. One man too sure of himself. One girl laughing like no one would ever know. She winced. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't mean to hurt her." I nodded. "Most people don't mean to, but they do anyway." She looked like she might cry. I didn't comfort her. Instead, I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. She blinked. "What?" "Come in. I made extra soup." "You can sit for a moment before you go back to wherever you're hiding." She hesitated, then stepped inside. She sat at the edge of the kitchen table like a child in trouble. She looked around at the photos, the worn curtains, the bowl of apples. "I've never seen her cry like that," she said finally. "Your daughter." "She cried when she was 3, I replied, "because I threw away a plastic necklace she made me. I didn't mean to. But I was tired. I cleaned too fast." "Did she forgive you?" "Eventually, but she never forgot." Nora nodded, and then, very quietly, said, "You did the right thing." I looked at her, really looked, and I saw not just a woman who'd made a mistake, but a woman who had enough shame to come and admit it, which is more than I can say for the man she sinned with. "Eat your soup," I said. She did, and I sat across from her, watching her spoon shake slightly as she lifted it. I didn't comfort her. I didn't scold her. I just let her sit in the ruins like everyone else. The soup was gone, and the girl had left. She thanked me before she did, said she was sorry again. I didn't say I forgave her, because forgiveness isn't something you pass out like peppermints. It's something you grow into. Maybe she would, in time. Maybe Celine would too. Maybe not. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet. It wasn't heavy like before. Not hollow, either. It was a useful quiet. The kind that lets you hear your own breath and know it means something. I made a list. Not a long one. Just 3 things. 1. Finalize the trust for the boys. 2. Rewrite the will. 3. Change the title on the house. I was done letting my life drift toward the people who shouted the loudest. Now it was time to put things where they were truly seen. At 8:15 the next morning, I called Franklin. "Good morning," he said, with that voice lawyers use when they know you're about to shift your whole story. "Rough night?" "Clear one," I said. "I need you to come by the house. I have meetings until noon. I'll make you soup." He laughed. "That's better than most settlements I've seen this week." "I'll be there at 1. By the time Franklin arrived, I had everything laid out. Folders, documents, the teapot refilled twice over. He stepped in, shook off the cold, and sat across from me at the kitchen table like he'd done a dozen times before. But this time, I didn't hesitate. "I want everything locked up," I said. "No back doors. No way to override it, not without me or a court order." He opened his laptop. "Okay, let's go piece by piece." It took nearly 2 hours. The house, transferred into a living trust with me as the primary trustee and my grandsons as contingent beneficiaries. They wouldn't own it now, but they'd inherit it directly. No probate, no interference. The accounts, restructured. Investment portfolios redistributed. A new trust fund established for each boy, with funds from the canceled wedding redirected equally. The will, rewritten. Not in anger, not in revenge, but with clarity. "You want to exclude your daughter completely?" Franklin asked carefully. "No," I said. "She'll receive a letter." He looked confused. I explained. "There's a handwritten letter I'll prepare. It will be included with the will. It won't contain bitterness, just a record of what was asked, what was given, what was lost." He nodded slowly. "That's unusual, but not unwise." I poured him more tea. "When James died," I said quietly, "I thought the worst thing that could happen had already happened. But being forgotten while you're still alive, that's worse. Because you're there. You're watching it." Franklin didn't answer. He didn't have to. After he left, I sat in the armchair by the window. The same one I used to rock Celine in, back when her needs were simple, back when love was loud and easy, and she still believed I could fix everything. Outside, the leaves had begun to fall. Slow, confident, not afraid of the landing. I picked up a photo from the shelf. The boys, last Christmas, building a lopsided snowman in my backyard. One was wearing my scarf. The other had cheeks so red it looked like someone had painted them on. I hadn't seen them since spring, not by my choice. Every visit came with conditions, with lectures, with warnings. "They're on a schedule," Celine would say. "They need structure." Structure. As if love was chaos. As if a warm cookie in a blanket fort were somehow criminal. I'd watched from the window once when they came to drop off a forgotten toy. Celine stayed in the car. Jared walked it to the door. He didn't ring, just left it there, like a delivery. Now I understood why. They were preparing for this all along. Not the collapse, but the distance. It wasn't sudden. It was slow and deliberate, like water under a foundation, quiet until it wasn't. And now the floor had caved in. But I was still standing, still here, and for the first time, I wasn't holding up anyone else's roof. At 4 that afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "This is Leo, Celine's oldest. Mom doesn't know I have her phone. Can I call you?" I stared at the screen for a long time. He was 7. Too young to be pulling stunts like that, but maybe not too young to feel something was wrong. I wrote back, "Yes." 2 minutes later, the phone rang. "Grandma?" a small voice said. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you mad at us?" I felt my throat tighten. "No, darling. I could never be mad at you. Mom says you don't want to see us anymore." "That's not true," I said. "I want to see you very much." A pause. "Can I come visit?" I closed my eyes. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I let myself cry. Not from hurt, but from hope. They arrived 2 days later. Not with fanfare, not with apology. Just a knock on the door at 3:20 in the afternoon, and when I opened it, there they were. Leo and Caleb, 7 and 5. Standing awkwardly, each holding a backpack. Leo had a juice box in his hand, already half empty. Caleb clutched a plush dinosaur by the neck like it was armor. Behind them stood a woman I didn't recognize. "She's our neighbor," Leo explained. "Mom said she had a thing, so she asked Miss Rhonda to drop us off." Miss Rhonda gave me a brief, sympathetic smile. "I was told to come back by 6. I nodded. heart tight in my chest. "Would you like some tea, Miss Rhonda?" "No, thank you," she said quickly. "I'll be back." The boys walked in like they hadn't been kept away for months. Leo threw his backpack down in the hallway and kicked off his sneakers without untying them. Caleb followed, more timid, hovering near the doorway until I knelt down and opened my arms. "You sure you want a hug from an old grandma?" I asked gently. He nodded, and the moment he leaned in, I felt the full weight of it, of all that I'd missed. The quiet moments, the ordinary sweetness of a child's warmth against your chest. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, Leo was already raiding the kitchen. "You still keep cookies in the brown tin?" I smiled. "Check the third shelf." "Ha! Told you," he said to Caleb, who was now halfway across the room, watching him with wide eyes. They made themselves at home in the way only children can, without permission, without apology. And I let them. We played cards. We drank apple juice. I pulled out the box of wooden train tracks they used to love, and they spent 20 minutes arguing over how to build the loops. Leo wanted a double tunnel. Caleb wanted a bridge over a volcano. I let them figure it out. And while they played, I watched. Not just them, myself. How easily I still fit into this rhythm. How naturally my hands remembered the shape of care. Not the strained care I'd grown used to, the kind that cost too much, that came with invoices and expectations, but the real kind. "Why haven't we come over more?" Leo asked suddenly, his voice casual, but his eyes serious. I didn't answer right away. Caleb looked up too, waiting. "Well," I said carefully, "sometimes grown-ups make things complicated. They forget how simple love really is." Leo chewed on that. Then, "I told Mom I wanted to come see you." "What did she say?" He shrugged. "She said maybe, but I knew maybe meant no. So I asked Miss Rhonda." I smiled. "Smart boy." "I told her you weren't scary," he added. "Just kind of quiet." I laughed at that. "Kinda quiet" is the best review I've had in years. At 5:30, Miss Rhonda returned. The boys didn't want to leave. "Can we stay longer?" Leo asked. "Grandma has to rest," she said, but gently. "Maybe next time." "When's next time?" Caleb asked. I knelt beside them again. "You can come whenever you want," I said. "This house will always have a spot for you." Leo looked back at me as they walked toward the car. "Even if Mom gets mad?" "Even then." He nodded, serious, as if sealing a deal. Then they were gone. That night, I sat with the photo box open on my lap. Not the official albums, just the box. The one with the random snapshots, the blurry ones, the ones no one frames but no one throws away. I held a photo of Celine at age 10, sitting on my shoulders at the state fair, cotton candy in one hand, pointing to the sky with the other. I remember that day. How the ride operator let us go around twice because it was so empty. How she'd begged me to win her a stuffed frog, and I'd spent $14 to do it, popping balloons until my fingers ached. That girl still lives in my mind. That girl is easier to love than the woman who sent her sons here through a neighbor like they were packages from a missed delivery. But I loved them both. And maybe that was my flaw. Or maybe it was my strength. At 8, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it slowly. And there she was. Celine, still in her coat. No makeup, no prepared smile. Just a face I hadn't seen unguarded in years. She looked smaller than I remembered. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She didn't sit. Just stood near the table, eyes flicking to the boys' juice cups, the toy dinosaur, the train tracks still half assembled on the rug. So they were here. Yes. You could have told me. You could have brought them yourself. She winced, like that truth had landed somewhere deep. I wanted to, she admitted, but I didn't know if you'd. What? She swallowed. Still want us? I looked at her, really looked. This wasn't the girl from the wedding flyers, the one with the champagne glass and the perfect pose. This wasn't even the woman with the cold emails and clipped phone calls. This was my daughter, as raw as I'd seen her in 20 years. I always wanted you, I said, even when you didn't make it easy. She looked down. When she finally met my eyes again, they were wet. I messed up. Yes, I said. You did. Silence. Then she asked, almost like a child, "Can we fix it?" I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and poured 2 cups of tea. One for her, one for me, and when I set it down in front of her, she understood. Some bridges don't burn in one night, some take years, and some, if you're very lucky, you can rebuild plank by plank. The tea steamed between us. Celine cupped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. Her fingers moved, restless, like she wasn't used to stillness. Neither of us spoke for a while. The quiet was different now, not heavy with anger or silence born from disappointment. It was cautious, fragile, like a newborn thing trying to breathe. I didn't think you'd let me in, she said finally. I almost didn't. She nodded. She didn't argue. I was so sure I had everything under control, she said, voice low. The wedding, the budget, Jared, the boys, my whole life. I watched her closely. And then, she continued, you pulled the thread, and the whole thing fell apart. No, I corrected gently. I just stopped holding it together. That landed somewhere. She sat back in the chair, looking around the kitchen like she hadn't seen it in years. Maybe she hadn't. Not really. Not since the boys were small and she still came by after grocery runs, dropping off plastic bags and complaints in equal measure. Why didn't you say something sooner? She asked. Before it got so bad. I did. Just not in words you wanted to hear. She didn't argue that either. I took a sip of my tea. You know, I said slowly, the night before the wedding, I lay in bed and tried to remember the last time you asked me a question. A real one. Not about money, not about logistics, just about me. She looked at me, startled. I couldn't think of one. Her eyes dropped. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her. But I also knew it wasn't enough. I spent most of my life making things easier for people, I continued. Your father, you, the laundry staff, customers. I got very good at it. So good, in fact, that no one thought to ask if I wanted to. You always seemed so capable. Because I had no choice. She nodded again, slower this time. I used to think you didn't understand me, she said. That you were too practical. That you didn't care about style or culture or the way things looked. You're right, I said. I didn't care about appearances. I cared about being able to pay the light bill. That stung. But she took it. I thought that made me better, she whispered. It wasn't said to wound. It was said like someone confessing an old, secret thought they were ashamed of now. I know, I said. I felt it every time you looked through me like I was embarrassing you. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. I thought if I just kept succeeding, she said, you'd come around. And I thought if I kept giving, I said softly, you'd finally see me. We both sat in that. 2 women, 2 mirrors, both chasing the same thing in opposite directions. Do you love him? I asked. Jared? Yes. She hesitated too long. I thought I did. I nodded. Sometimes we love the idea, not the man. She stared into her mug. He hasn't called. I'm not surprised. She didn't defend him. Progress. I feel like such a fool, she said quietly. Then you're finally learning. That surprised a small laugh out of her. I don't know what happens now, she admitted. To the boys, to the house, to everything. I set my cup down. That's the thing about falling apart, I said. It's a good chance to rebuild right. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, her eyes weren't filled with strategy or defensiveness or performance. They were just tired, human. I want to do better, she said. I believed her. But again, it wasn't enough. You'll need to show them, I said. The boys. That love doesn't come with strings. That being a mother isn't about controlling the scene. It's about showing up every day, especially when it's hard. She nodded. And you, she added. What about you? I smiled faintly. I think I've shown enough. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. It was tentative, light, not a grip, just contact. I wish I'd come sooner, she whispered. I know, but I'm here now. I see that. Silence again, not cold, not empty, still and kind. Celine stayed for almost 2 hours. We didn't solve anything, not really. There was no list, no agreement, no clear plan of how to move forward. But sometimes, healing doesn't come with steps. Sometimes, it just comes with staying, with not walking away. When she left, she looked back at the house. I could see the tension in her shoulders. What if the boys ask why the wedding didn't happen? She asked. They will, I said. And you'll answer with something true. Maybe not all of it, not right away, but enough. She nodded. And what if they ask about you? About everything else? I held her gaze. You tell them I stood up for myself. She nodded again, slower this time, as if the weight of that answer landed on her and settled in a place she hadn't opened in a long time. Then she walked to her car and drove away. I didn't watch her turn the corner. I went back inside, put the dishes away, folded the boys' blanket from the couch, tidied the train tracks. Then I sat down and exhaled, not out of exhaustion, out of something quieter, relief. The next morning, I opened the front door to find a small box on the porch. No note, no markings. Just a plain cardboard square with a bit of twine tied around it. Inside, a photograph. It was one of mine, clearly taken from the house. Me and Celine, years ago, when she was maybe 12. I'd forgotten the moment entirely. We were in the backyard, both in oversized flannel shirts. She had one leg on the picnic table, striking some ridiculous pose. I was laughing, head tilted back, mid-motion, caught off guard. We looked happy, not perfect, but real. Under the photo was a piece of notebook paper. I remember this day. You let me use your lipstick and didn't say anything when I got it all over my chin. You just laughed. Thank you for always showing up, even when I didn't know how to ask. S. I folded the paper slowly, tucked it into the drawer with the rest. Not because I was ready to forget, but because I was finally ready to remember without pain. Around noon, Leo called. We made banana muffins, he said, clearly proud. But Mom said they're weird looking. They probably are, I said. The weird ones usually taste best. Want some? I'd love that. He paused. Can we come over? Of course. Caleb wants to bring the dinosaur again. He can. Cool? See you in 30 minutes. He hung up without waiting for a goodbye. Kids do that. They assume time will stretch for them, that the people they love will stay. And maybe, just maybe, if we're lucky, they're right. They came with muffins, still warm, still lopsided, and delicious. The kind that fall apart when you pick them up. The kind that stick to your fingers because someone didn't grease the pan enough. We sat on the porch and ate without plates. Caleb smeared chocolate on the bench. Leo wiped it with his sleeve and said, "Don't tell Mom." I didn't. They asked questions. Not about the wedding. Not yet. Just small things. Why do you have so many bird feeders? Because birds remember kindness. Why does your mailbox squeak? Because it's old. But it still works. Are you sad? I looked at Leo. His eyes were too sharp for his age. I was, I said. But not right now. Okay. That was enough. He didn't ask more. Sometimes children understand what adults won't. That answers don't fix anything, but honesty makes the weight easier to carry. Later, after they'd gone home, I sat at the table with my tea and a yellow notepad. I didn't plan to write anything, but my hand moved anyway. Not a letter, not a journal, just a list. What I know now. I am not too much. I am not hard to love. Money is not a substitute for being wanted. Silence is not kindness. Saying enough is not cruelty. Grandchildren can heal you if you let them be more than leverage. Boundaries are love in grown-up clothes. I set the pen down. The paper looked plain, but it felt like a map. Not one for returning, one for beginning again. The days settled. Not back to what they were, not to how things used to be, but to something quieter, something steadier. The boys came by every Thursday after school, sometimes with muffins, sometimes with scribbled drawings, once with a toy drone that got stuck in my maple tree and required a broom, a stepladder, and an embarrassing phone call to the neighbor's teenage son to retrieve. They didn't ask about the wedding, not directly. But one day, Caleb stood in the middle of the kitchen and said, "Is Mom still mad?" I paused. Sometimes people are mad because they're hurt, I said. And sometimes they're quiet because they don't know how to say what they feel. He considered this, then went back to coloring his dinosaur. That was enough. For now. Celine called once or twice a week. Not long conversations. Not always comfortable, but real. One time she asked if I remembered the night her hamster died. "Of course," I said. "You cried so hard I thought you'd make yourself sick." "I thought you were going to replace him," she said. "You mean lie to you?" "No, I thought you'd fix it." I didn't answer right away. "That's the trouble," I said finally. "You started to think I could fix everything, and when I couldn't anymore, you stopped thinking I was useful." She was quiet. Then, "I don't think that now. I know." The trust for the boys was finalized by the end of the month. Franklin called to confirm everything. "They'll inherit the assets directly," he said. "Not as minors. Not now. But the paperwork is clear. No one can touch it. Not even their mother." "Good." He hesitated. "Do you want them to know?" "Not yet," I said. "Let them love me without price tags." The house grew quiet again, but it was a good kind of quiet, not empty. Just mine. I started waking up earlier, made my tea slower, took longer walks. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I liked the feeling of my shoes on the pavement. People in town had started talking. You could feel it in the way they looked at me in the bakery, at the post office, at the hair salon. Not unkindly, just aware. Someone had seen the groom leave the venue early. Someone else had heard the florist got a cancellation notice 15 minutes before unloading the van. Someone's niece said the mother of the bride didn't even stay for the first toast. I didn't correct any of them. People will build their own stories. I'd just decided to live mine instead. One morning, I opened the pantry and realized I had 4 jars of molasses and no cinnamon. That's what happens when you spend too long focusing on other people. You lose track of your own inventory. I went to the store. At checkout, the clerk, a girl with dyed red hair and chipped black nails, looked at me and said, "Weren't you supposed to have a wedding?" I blinked, then smiled. "No," I said. "I was supposed to have peace, and I do." She looked at me like I'd spoken in another language, and maybe I had. Later that day, I pulled out a photo of my own wedding. James in that awful rented tux. Me in a borrowed veil. The dress was mine, though, bought with 3 months' worth of tips from the diner. I loved that dress. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. And for a while, that was enough. Until it wasn't. Until cancer came. Until silence filled the side of the bed where his voice used to be. That silence lasted longer than his illness, longer than Celine's rebellion, longer than the wedding that never was. But now it was breaking, not with noise, with clarity. That night, I sat by the fireplace, not lit, just for the comfort of the brick, and wrote a note on the back of a receipt. It wasn't a letter, not really, just a thought. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't saying no to my daughter. It was waiting so long to say yes to myself. I folded it, slid it into the yellow notepad. One day, someone might read it. Maybe the boys. Maybe Celine. Maybe no one. That's fine. Some truths are just meant to be written, even if they're never read. The first time Celine came back for dinner, she brought wine. She stood on the porch holding it like an apology, unsure whether to hand it to me or hide it behind her back. "It's not expensive," she said, "but I remembered you used to like this one." I took it. I still do. She looked relieved. Inside, I'd already set the table. Nothing fancy, just what I used to call Wednesday food. Roasted chicken thighs, mashed potatoes with too much butter, green beans that still had some crunch. Real food, the kind that doesn't pretend to impress. "I remember this smell," Celine said as she walked into the kitchen. "It always meant you weren't mad." I raised an eyebrow. Food meant that? In my head, yeah. I didn't argue. We ate slowly. The boys were at a sleepover with friends. It was just the two of us, like it hadn't been in over 20 years. She didn't fill the silence with stories. I didn't try to steer the conversation. We just sat. "Do you think it's possible to start over?" she asked suddenly. "No," I said, "but I think it's possible to begin differently." She thought about that, then nodded. After dinner, we washed the dishes together. She offered to dry, but I handed her the sponge instead. She didn't argue. "I talked to Jared once after the wedding," she said, not looking up from the plate. "He didn't apologize. He asked me to keep it quiet so it wouldn't hurt his brand." I didn't flinch. I just said, "And what did you say? That my brand is raising 2 boys who don't grow up to be him?" I glanced at her. She wasn't proud when she said it. She was tired. But there was steel in her voice now. Not for show. For survival. "He said I'd regret embarrassing him publicly." "And do you?" She shook her head. "I regret letting it get that far. I regret dragging you into it. I regret needing a wedding to prove I had a life worth showing off." She rinsed the plate slowly, like she was washing something more than soap away. but I don't regret what you did. That, more than anything, I didn't expect." She looked at me. "I hated you for it that night. I was so humiliated. But somewhere inside, I was also relieved. Like you did the thing I was too afraid to do." I didn't reach for her hand, but I looked her in the eye. "I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it for me. And maybe that's what made it finally real." She nodded. "Still," she said softly, "thank you." After she left, I sat alone again. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt possible. Like maybe, just maybe, we weren't walking backward anymore. Maybe we were building something new, not out of guilt or regret, but from a place where the air was clearer. That night, I didn't open the photo box. I didn't need to. The memories weren't in the box anymore. They were here, in the dishes still drying on the counter, in the chair she'd pushed back neatly from the table, in the smell of roasted garlic still clinging to the air. And maybe, for the first time in years, that was enough. Thanksgiving came. Not the big kind, not with a dozen relatives and a folding table in the garage. Just me, Celine, and the boys. I roasted a chicken instead of a turkey. Less waste, less ceremony, more taste. Celine brought cranberry sauce in a ceramic bowl she used to hate. "I remember calling this thing ugly," she said as she set it down. "It is ugly," I said. She smiled. "But it holds," I added. "That's what matters." Leo and Caleb raced through the hallway yelling about gravy. I let them. The house was louder than usual, but the noise was warm, not invasive. After dinner, the boys lay on the carpet with full bellies and a movie playing too loud. Celine stayed behind to help me clear the plates. "Do you miss him?" she asked quietly. It took me a second to realize she meant her father. "I miss what we had before we got tired," I said. She nodded. "You two made it work for a long time." "Yes," I said. "But sometimes, working just means no one's willing to say it's over." She didn't answer right away. Then, "I think I understand that now." She started to rinse a plate, then stopped. "You're not like I remembered," she said. I looked over. "You used to be softer." Not in a bad way, just like you'd bend before you'd break. "And now?" She met my eyes. "Now I think you know you can do both." I turned off the tap, let the silence settle. "People don't like when women change," I said. "Especially after a certain age. They think we're supposed to freeze, be polite, be available, be grateful." She didn't argue. I handed her a towel. "Let them be uncomfortable," I said. She folded the towel slowly, like the act itself carried meaning. "I used to think if I became the right kind of woman, everything would go smoothly." "There is no right kind," I said. "Only real." She gave me a look, half sad, half relieved. Later, after she'd left with the boys, I walked through the house and picked up the scattered signs of their visit. A sock under the chair, a plastic spoon in the bathroom sink, a crayon in the folds of the couch. I didn't mind any of it. I left the crayon where it was, just because. In the kitchen, I poured myself a small glass of the same wine Celine had brought weeks ago. I lit a candle. I let the house be still again. Stillness didn't mean loneliness anymore. It meant space. Space I had earned. Space I had finally kept for myself. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. Folded. Handwritten. From Nora, the bridesmaid. I sat at the table to read it. "Mrs. Hendricks, I wanted to write to you properly. I've been thinking about our brief conversation, about what it means to hurt someone without meaning to, about how women are taught to compete for the scraps of attention men leave behind, and how long it takes to realize we don't have to. I've apologized to Celine. I know that doesn't undo what I did, but I meant it. And I'm working on the part of me that thought silence was safer than truth. You scared me, that night. Not because you yelled, you didn't, but because you didn't need to. You had a presence I'd never seen before. The kind that says, I know exactly who I am, and I won't beg to be respected. I want to learn that. I want to be that kind of woman. Thank you for showing me what it looks like. Nora. I folded the letter slowly, placed it in the drawer next to Celine's note. Not to save the moment, but to remember the shift. How far one act of refusal could ripple. Not to destroy, but to clarify. That night I dreamed of nothing. No weddings, no tears, no long drives in silence. Just quiet. Just breath. Just peace. And I woke rested. Not young. Not brand new, but full. The days kept unfolding, slow and even. Winter came in with rain instead of snow, softening the world without blanketing it. The boys started wearing their thicker coats and gloves, even when the weather didn't quite call for it. Children don't measure seasons by temperature. They go by ritual. Coats mean winter. Scarves mean cocoa. One Friday afternoon, Leo arrived alone. Celine had a doctor's appointment, and Caleb had a stomach bug. He came in with a backpack and a book under his arm. No screen time, he declared as he walked in. Oh? Yeah, I'm being good. I raised an eyebrow. And what does that mean? Mom said if I behave, I get to come back next week, too. Smart boy. He took off his coat, lined his shoes neatly by the door, and asked if he could have crackers. I gave him a small bowl and he sat at the table like a little old man, leafing through his book like it was a financial report. I sat across from him. You read all that, or just looking serious? I asked. He smirked. Little bit of both. Then, without warning, he said, Grandma, why don't you live with us? I looked at him. Because I like living here, I said. But wouldn't it be easier? Maybe. He crunched a cracker. Mom said you like quiet now. I do. He nodded, chewing, then looked up. Were you mad at her? I didn't answer right away. Sometimes, I said. But not always. Not now. He paused, thoughtful. I get mad at her too. That's normal. He leaned back in the chair, swinging his legs. I told her once she wasn't listening. She said she was tired. I think that means she just didn't want to. His words landed somewhere deep. People don't always have the energy to hear hard things, I said. Even grown-ups? Especially grown-ups. He nodded. Then, did you stop being mad because she said sorry? No, I said. I stopped because it was costing me too much. He frowned. Like money? Like peace. That word made him sit up. You can pay for peace? In a way. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, So is that what you did with the wedding? I felt the question hit before I could answer it. Not because he was being nosy, but because he was being honest. Yes, I said. He looked at me, not judgmental, just curious. I think that's okay, he said finally. If you paid for it, it should have been nice. But Mom said it got weird. It did get weird, he smiled. But you didn't get in trouble. I smiled back. Not the kind of trouble I care about. He finished his crackers, then looked around. Can I draw something? Papers in the drawer, pencils too. He drew for almost 20 minutes in silence, tongue sticking out, focused. Then he handed me the page. It was a house, my house, with trees, with smoke curling from the chimney, with two stick figures standing in front, one tall, one small. He'd written our names above them. "I like coming here," he said. "It feels like when I read books about safe places." I didn't cry, but something in my chest gave way, not with sadness, but with recognition. He'd seen it. He'd named it. This home, this choice, this life I fought to reclaim. It felt safe to him. That was enough. That was everything. 2 weeks before Christmas, Celine came by unannounced. She stood at the door with no makeup, her hair pulled back, wearing a coat that looked too thin for the weather. "I don't want tea," she said before I could speak. I stepped aside anyway. She walked in, stood near the kitchen table, then turned and looked at me like she'd rehearsed the words. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "All right." She didn't sit. "Did you ever regret having me?" I felt the floor steady itself beneath me, like it knew I'd need balance for this one. "No," I said. "Not once." She let out a breath. "But," I added, "I regret how much of myself I gave away, trying to prove I deserved to be loved by you." Her face changed, not because it hurt, but because she knew it was true. She nodded, then sat. "I've been seeing a counselor," she said, "trying to understand why I keep thinking people owe me something just for surviving. And? And I keep coming back to you." I sat too. "Not in a blaming way," she said quickly, "but in the way I watched you for years, giving, sacrificing, never asking, never resting. And I thought, that's what women do. They disappear in service." I didn't interrupt. She looked at her hands. "And when I started building my own life, I thought you'd be proud if I just looked successful. Not if I was kind, not if I stayed close, just if I had something to show." "You were raised in a world that measured women by performance," I said. "I won't blame you for playing the part." She looked up. "But you stopped." "I did." "How?" "I got tired." She almost laughed. "That's it?" "No," I said. "I got tired. And then I got honest. And then I got free." She went quiet again. Outside, the wind scratched at the windows. Finally, she said, "The night of the wedding, when it all collapsed, I told Jared I hated you." I nodded. "I figured. But later," she continued, "after he left, I started thinking about what it would have cost you to stay, to smile, to pretend." Her eyes were wet now. "I realized I would have hated you more if you had." She stood suddenly, walked to the window. "I thought I needed that wedding to feel chosen, but I didn't. I needed someone to choose me, not the image of me. And you were the only one who ever did." I joined her at the window. The street outside was quiet. Frost on the edges of the grass. A squirrel darting across the power line like it knew exactly where it was going. "I don't expect anything," she said. "Good. But I want to ask something." "All right. When I'm better," she said slowly. "Not now, not next week, when I'm someone I respect again. Will you let me take care of you?" I didn't answer right away, because no one had ever asked me that before. Not like that. Not with the understanding that I might say no. "Maybe," I said. She nodded. Then she took my hand, held it like it was something she hadn't realized was hers to hold. And for the first time, it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like grace. It didn't all change overnight. Celine didn't suddenly become tender. I didn't become endlessly forgiving. The boys still tracked mud into the house. People still whispered, though softer now. But something did change, or rather, settle. The way old earth settles after rain, darker, firmer, more certain of what it can hold. She started coming over with groceries. Not every week, and not with ceremony. Just quietly. Carrots, onions, a carton of eggs, 2 jars of jam she knew I liked. She'd set them on the counter, shrug, and say, "Got too much. Thought you might use some." I always did. One afternoon, we folded laundry together. No deep talk, just a rhythm of hands and fabric. She held up a pair of Leo's socks, mismatched and tiny. "You used to sew mine together when I lost the pairs," she said. I did. "I always thought it was because you couldn't afford new ones." It was. She held them a moment longer. Then, "But you made it feel like art." That stayed with me longer than she knew. I didn't reopen the wedding account. The money stayed where I moved it, in trusts, in clean lines, with conditions that protected more than just assets. They protected boundaries. Celine never asked me to reverse it. That was her real apology. She started sending me photos, not posed ones, not holiday portraits, just moments. Leo asleep with a book on his chest, Caleb in the kitchen wearing her shoes, a note Leo had written at school. "I love my grandma because she lets me be loud when the world wants quiet." I printed that one and taped it to the fridge. One morning, early spring, I took a walk alone to the park near the river. The same one where James and I used to bring Celine in a stroller. The path was wet, the trees bare, but the geese were back. Life, even when quiet, always circles back. I sat on a bench and watched a young woman try to wrestle her toddler into a coat. He screamed. She looked ready to cry. I caught her eye and smiled. She didn't smile back, but she held my gaze, and I nodded once, just enough for her to see. "You're not invisible. You're not failing. You're just tired. Sometimes that's all we need." A few weeks later, I opened my front door and found a single envelope. No address. Just my name. Inside, a photo of Caleb, grinning, tooth missing, holding up a sign he clearly made himself. "I have the best grandma in the world." Below it, in adult handwriting, Celine's. "Thank you for staying when I didn't know how to come back." I held the photo to my chest, not out of drama, but because some things are finally too tender to hold with just fingers. I didn't forgive everything. That's not how real stories end. But I stopped carrying it. There's a difference. I let love in again. Not because I forgot what it cost, but because I finally knew my worth. And when love comes to a woman who knows her worth, it has to come honest. It has to come slow. It has to come right. If you're reading this, maybe because someone sent it to you, maybe because you've been quiet too long, hear me now. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to begin again at any age. You are allowed to take up space, to keep your name on things, to withdraw your money and your silence when the price is dignity. And if the world tells you you're too old, too tired, too much, let it. Let them talk. Then stand up anyway. Set down the weight that isn't yours. And live. Because I promise you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Not once. Not quietly, but fully.